RIS Indica.
To the purple classes of RES Indica IAS Academy. देश बदला, पढ़ाई बदलो from chaos to clarity. So here we are with the second topic of the theme 2, that is preamble. On the left hand side which you are seeing is actually an old preamble. On the right hand side which you are seeing is actually a new preamble, an amended preamble. So it doesn't mean that we have two preamble, our constitution has two preambles, but actually they are the one on the right hand side is an amended part of the one at the left hand side. So this one is actually the old one without any amendments, and this is the one which has some amendments. So let's understand the journey of the preamble, everything, the birth, the journey, the significance, everything. Let's understand everything now. So I would be starting the preamble, the topic preamble, with some very basic facts. The first basic fact comprises of that it is totally based on, not totally, but yes, most of the part of it is based on the objectives resolution. Now, what is objectives resolution? Objectives resolution was a document which was moved by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru on 13th December 1946. So, our Constituent Assembly started the discussion on the Constitution on 9th December 1946, and just after the 4 days, the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru came up with an objectives resolution, which was adopted on January 22, 1947. What did this objective resolution constituted of? It was established, actually, it established the guiding principles. Please focus on the word. I am emphasizing on the word, the guiding principles for building the constitution. For building the constitution. So actually it included those principles on the basis of which the Constituent Assembly had to frame the whole constitution. So these principles was these were the principles which were mentioned in the objective resolution that actually mentioned what type of country should we have. Should it be a democratic? Should it be an anarchical? Should it be a monarchical? Or what type of country should we have? What type of government we will be having? What the parts we all would be having? So it actually mentioned the objectives of this meeting of Constituent Assembly. Now, and in the light of this objective resolution, on 26th November 1949, we adopted this constitution. We adopted this constitution as the only and the major part of the this India. India as a country. Coming on to what would have been the purposes of this preamble. The first purpose it fulfills is that it contains enacting clause. Enacting clause which brings the constitution into force. Actually, at the last part, in the last part of the preamble, it mentions that in our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution. So this is what actually it serves a purpose. This is how it serves the purpose for our country, for our constitution. Second purpose is it declares rights and freedoms, the great rights and freedoms, which actually the makers of the constitution intended to secure to all its citizens. Third purpose, it declares the type of government and polity which we as people of India sought to establish it in the country. The fourth purpose is it also throws light on the source of the constitution and from where we can get all these purposes verified. Just look here, the source of the constitution. This is how, this is what we wanted our country to be. This is the rights and freedoms, and this is actually the annexing clause. And this is how we divide, to just for our understanding, we divide the constitution in some parts. However, the constitution itself or the preamble itself does not mention about these parts, but just for our understanding. So in that case, the, the preamble can be divided into four parts for understanding. The first, it mentions uh, the source of power or the source of authority, we the people of India. Second, it mentions about uh, objectives with reference to the country as a whole, or you can also say the nature of the state. Third, it mentions objectives for the people of the India, for the citizens of India. Fourth, it mentions it also mentions the date on which we adopted the constitution, the date of adoption. So this is how we can actually categorize the constitution, the preamble, and we can very easily understand. Now there's one more interesting fact which I forgot to mention it over here in the first slide, that it was the last piece of drafting which was adopted by the Constituent Assembly at the end of the first reading of the Constitution. And at that time, it was mentioned at the beginning of the Constitution. Right? So it was the last piece of drafting. This was the last piece which was to be drafted. That should we have a preamble or not? Then we actually decided in the first reading of the Constitution that this is what objective resolution is, what we can make the new preamble of the Constitution. Fine. So starting with some this parts, starting with the first part, that is your source of authority, which mentions the we the people of India. So the first part is source of authority. The source of authority, as you can very easily, very clearly see in this part, we the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into. So the source of authority is very clearly mentioned is we the people of India. We the people of India. So somewhere it is the source of the constitution as well. It specifies it specifies the source of constitution as well. It specifies that we country in itself is a republican country. It specifies that the power, the actual power, is in the hands of the people of the country. Or I can say it also wants to say that our country is democratic in nature. It has a it has a democratic character. So we the people of India in itself defines these three things: the source of the constitution, as you can read it over here. We the people of India in our constituent assembly hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves this constitution. Give to ourselves this constitution. So it also mentions the republican nature. It also specifies the democratic character of the country, of the constitution. Obviously, if the constitution mentions our country to be democratic, then the country needs to be democratic, because we are constitutional supreme country. We have a constitutional supremacy here. Now, what can the impact be put by this we the people of India? How does this part of the preamble puts an impact? You have very well seen, you're very well acquaintance of this part, that we have something called vote of no confidence motion, where if the representatives of the people have shedded their confidence in the government, then the government has to step down. Then the whole government has to step down, even if it is created by a single party. So this vote of no confidence is actually the reflection of we the people of India. It's actually the reflection of that we are democratic in nature. So this is an impact. This is actually an impact which is put by these words, we the people of India. The vote of no confidence motion justifies this. I hope you got me. Coming on to the next part is the objectives with reference to country, or we can also say the nature of the state, the nature of the country. So here are the objectives. We the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. These five words in total somewhere justifies, somewhere mentions that we, India as a country, have what objectives. Yet the makers of the constitution had what objectives? To see our country as a sovereign, to see our country as a socialist, as a secular country, as a democratic republic country. On the other hand, when we have fulfilled it after mentioning it in detail in the constitution, now it has become our nature as well. That yes, we are sovereign, yes, we are socialist, yes, we are secular, democratic, and republic as well. So, we being a republic is justified by the we the people of India. We being democratic is justified by the we the people of India, and it is also mentioned in this part, the second part of the this preamble. So let's start with the first word. The first word here mentioned is sovereign. What does a sovereign mean? Sovereign means the freedom from interference. It simply means freedom from interference. Now, if we look at in detail, the interference here can be of two types. The first is internal interference, the other is external interference. Like if you are studying, there can be two types of interference. The one which is created by your sibling, which is a younger sibling usually do it. Now, in case the elder siblings are also involved in it, but they become quite mature. Anyways, this is just an example. The other type of interferences which your neighbors can actually make it. Oh, so you are preparing for civil services. They usually get jealous. So that is the type of external interference. They get jealous, and whenever they get to know that this is your study time, they burst out their mics, the speakers, the, you can say songs at a very high voice. So these some kind of cheap activities, cheap actions are done by neighbors nowadays. Anyways, hardly matters. So interference can be internal interference and external interference. So what type of interference does this word sovereign provides freedom to? Provides freedom from, actually. It is only the external interference. We as a country, if want to take a decision, we have no pressure from any other country. But yes, the same pressure regarding any legislation, regarding any decision can be put by some internal communities, pressure groups, opposition parties, people, the citizens of the country. But in that case, no other country can directly put a pressure that should you have a war with China or not? Should you have a war with this Pakistan, or should you have to be the member of United Nations or not? Should you have to be the member of Commonwealth or not? So that type of external interference is actually we are saved from. This word actually refers to that this country, it just whose whose preamble mentions this word sovereign, this country is actually free from any type of external interference. In other words, it also means that there is no control of foreign power. Now it's the time. We have understood. Now is the time to write down. No control of foreign power. We can acquire or cede any part of Indian territory. This is what it means. We can internally, internally, we can legislate on any subject regarding our federal division of education, of legislative powers, of fundamental rights, whatever, whatever. Internally, we can legislate on any subject, and it also specifies that the power can only originate from the constitution. Neither any of the government is powerful than this constitution, nor any other country or any organization is powerful than the constitution, because constitution mentions the word sovereign. So following that word, neither the government, any party, any political party has formed the government can actually impact it. So power can only originate from the constitution. Now what can be the impacts? What can be the impacts of this word? What have been the impacts of this word? That is, we have membership to several organizations, to several international organizations. On the one part, we are a member of Shanghai Cooperation. On the other part, we are a member of Quad as well. Right? So, next, it also impacts the data localization proposals in data protection. When it comes to data protection, now what is actually happening nowadays is we are using our social media a lot, and you all might be aware that all these social media handles are not being developed, have not been developed in India, and also all their storage houses are out of India. So whenever we are uploading any of the videos, any of the pictures, any of our locations, the data is being saved out of the India. Now it is our proposal that it is the data of our people, and we want the saving of data to be localized. The data should be saved of our country, should be saved in our country only. Nobody else can actually object to it because we are sovereign. We as a country are sovereign. Third, if we look at the issue of Galwan Valley, so there was nobody else to guide us. It was we who can actually take a decision with any of the pressure from any of the organizations. Hardly matters if we are part to it or not. The fourth impact which you might have observed is the Indo-Bangladesh land boundary agreement. I'm sorry, land boundary agreement. So we did it as 100 Constitutional Amendment Act, and we had no pressure from any of the country. It is our neighbors matter. We neighbors can actually decide on it. So we don't need help of any other organization or the country or something. Fine. So this is how the word sovereign is justified here. Coming on to the next word. After sovereign, let's jump to socialist. First of all, if you observe it very carefully, in the earlier preamble, means the preamble before amendment, there is no word such as socialist here. So here comes a bundle of questions. Very simple and very basic. Why didn't we have the word socialist earlier? Why did we have it later after the amendment? And were we actually socialist before mentioning it in the preamble? Because preamble is what it is. It is actually a reflection of our constitution. It is actually a ID card of our constitution. Fine. So I'm mentioning a trick here as well. Like what happens in prelims is sometimes some type of keywords are actually used, and you need to verify, does this actually refer to the preamble? So keywords would be like ID card of the constitution, jewel of the constitution, vision of the makers, soul of the constitution. So these are such keywords which you may find in the previous year questions which have been used. Now, sir, how to check, how to verify it, whether a specific author has used that specific word, whether in reference to the preamble of the Constitution, or it is just a vague in nature. So, just to check that, I can mention here three tricks. Like the first trick is if you want to identify, if you want to identify. However, it will not be short, but it will help you a lot. The first thing which you can check is whether that word can be legally defined or not. If that word is not actually legally defined, then that word is used in reference to preamble. Second thing, it will be non-substantive in nature. Third, it will be abstract in nature. So, at least any of these conditions will be fulfilled. At least. Fine. So, coming back to the word socialist. The word socialist here actually means, to understand the word socialist, let's compare it with its opposite term, capitalism. On the other hand, we have socialism. Now, capitalism, if we look at in the context of resources, here you will find private resources, a lot of private resources, where the where the price of the any good or service will totally depend upon demand and supply of that good or services, which is known as a free market. That market is totally free. Nobody else is actually interfering in that. So it is laissez-faire. Laissez-faire is a term which you will be reading in economics specifically. You might have read or you might be reading it in laissez-faire. Laissez-faire, the term where it means that the market is open. The price will be decided by demand or supply. Coming to socialism, all the resources will be national resources. No private resources. No private resources. However, I have already discussed, I think, with you that these capitalism and socialism are only available in theories, in their pure form. There is no such country which is practically possible, which is practically on the theme of capitalism. However, maximum of its economy is capitalism, but not whole of its economy is capitalism. So that is not practically possible. They are only available, purely available in theories. So socialism is national resources. It means there will be an interference of government here. So the question here is why the socialist word was added later? Why was it added later? Weren't we socialist earlier? We were socialist. We were socialist at the time of the independence as well. But the form has been changed. How? Just three stages. There are three stages of socialism here. The India through which has passed from. Stage 1, we were provider. I'm talking about the time 1950s to 80s. We were provider. The we means the government was provider here. It was an excessive presence. There was an excessive intervention by the state. So we were actually providing the resources. Then comes the stage 2, regulator. When in 1991, around 1991, the LPG policies, the new economic policies were introduced. At that time, we became regulator. So from 90s to 2000, we were regulator. So there was excessive, just an oversight. We were keeping everything at surveillance, at supervision. The only uh, the only you can say the task of the government is supervision. Then comes the stage 3, which is the present stage, that is facilitator, from 2000 to present. Facilitator, we are enabling everything but with caution. The government is enabling everything but with caution, with some warnings, with some cautions. So this is how we were socialist. Then why, sir? The question still stands. Then why, through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, 1976, this word was added? Does the type of socialism which you have told us, the stage 1, stage 2, specifically in stage 1, does the preamble mentions it over here or no? Actually, at the time of independence and being a democratic country, we couldn't have been socialist, that type of socialist, for a very long time, because we were a democratic country. We chose to be a democratic country. And at that time, the type of socialism which was famous was Marxist socialism. Karl Marx definition of socialism, where which I discussed here, this type of socialism was very prevalent in the minds of the country, of a whole global community. So if we would have written socialism at that time, it would have actually, the preamble would have been misinterpreted. Being a democratic country, socialism, which the Karl Marx mentions about, that is not matching. This is not a very good match. So just to avoid that, the framers of the constitution, the framers of the constitution mentioned here equality of opportunity and to promote among them all. Equality of opportunity, because what does Karl Marx says? The socialism of Karl Marx says, if the country has 100 rupees as its resources, the 100 rupees should be divided equally among the people of the country. Hardly matters what the job they are doing. So it is the whole properties of public. But being a democratic country, we say we say that there should be a difference between a salary of or the resources of a doctor, of resources of a businessman, the other businessman, of a resources of a lawyer, of a resources of a teacher, of a resources of one who is a sweeper, because they are doing different types of job, and the different types of job is adding different amount to the GDP of the country. So we are not actually dividing the whole of resources equally, rather we are providing equality of opportunity. Equality of opportunity. We will give chance everybody to read, write, to study, but we won't divide all the resources equally. We will give chance. Everybody has a chance. You are free to be an IAS, you are free to be a doctor, you are free to be an engineer, you are free to be a lawyer, anything. Equality of opportunity. And those classes, those depressed classes who have experienced exploitation from thousands of years, have been provided the reservation as well. That is equality of opportunity. So the framers of the constitution did not wanted it to be added explicitly, but they mentioned it in the constitution. That type of socialism is mentioned in the preamble itself, not even the constitution, the preamble itself. So it was added by 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1976. The same happened with the secularism. I will be discussing about the same. Now, what does socialism here mentions to? The socialism here can be understood as, if I try to understand the meaning, we have discussed the whole of the story, and let's come to the meaning. The actual meaning is to eliminate inequality. This is what the Indian socialism refers to. To eliminate inequality. Now, how can we eliminate inequality? Either through dividing all the resources equally, the theory of Karl Marx, or by providing equality of opportunity. So we chose the other type, being a democratic country, equality through opportunity, equality of opportunity. We would be providing equal opportunities to every person. So to eliminate inequality, inequality in terms of income, inequality in terms of status, inequality in terms of standards of life. Right? So this is what the socialism of India refers to. Now you can see the same. You can see the impact. The impact is equal pay for equal work. DBSP, Directive Principles of State Policy, equal pay for equal work. However, the different gender is doing it. Fine. Manrega, so it also refers to eliminate inequality. That at least employment should be given. Fine. So this is the word socialist refers to, which actually means, in other terms, also means that intervention of the state for the welfare of the people. In capitalism, there is nothing such welfare of the people. Fine. Coming on to the second term, that is secularism or secular. As you can see, the next term is secular. Now, what does secular mean? To understand secularism, it is, you can say, a reasonable freedom of faith. You have freedom to faith anybody. You can faith anybody. You have a freedom of faith. Now, it can be understood through two perspectives. Through an individual's perspective and through the perspective of the state as a whole or a country as a whole. When I try to perspective of individual, there can be three type of people. The first, who are theists. They say that we believe in the existence of God and we want the other person should also believe in the existence of God. The second is agnostics. These are the type of people who believe in God, who personally believe, or you can say who personally do not believe in God, but sorry, the personally agnostics are people who personally do not believe in God, but they have no problem if any person around there is believing in God. Then comes the third type of people, that is atheists. They do not believe in God and they also do not like other people believing in God. Fine. Coming on to country's perspective. There is a country which is a theocratic country. Now, what is a theocratic country? Where the religion is above the law. Means even the laws of that country will be decided by the religion. The laws are actually influenced by the religion. Like if you come to some West Asian countries, so what happens there is no system of loan, there is no banking system because in their specific religion, the system of loan or the system of banking is not considered right. So even their laws are actually based on their religion. The whole economy, the whole country is being run on the basis of the provisions of religion. Then comes secular, a country which is secular, where the law is greater than the religion. And this country has no official religion. They have no official religion. In case of theocratic, it has their official religion. Fine. Now, this secular country can be of two types. There are countries who neither promote and who neither nor they, you can say, interference, nor they interfere. These countries are known as passive secular. On the other hand, countries which promote and also interfere. Now, why there are such countries who promote or interfere? They promote equally all the religions. Why there has been need of such countries where the government is actually promoting all the regions equally and they are also interfering? This type of secularism can survive in a country where the majority of majority means around 80-90%. Around 80-90% are the people of the same religion. On the other hand, in these types of countries, you may find a great amount of diversity in India, and they are known as active secular country. So, due to diversity, they have to promote all the religions equally, and they have to interfere in their matters in case a criminal offense comes out. Means it is they are just keeping a surveillance that if in case a problem rises out, they will take an action. Diversity is the reason. We had to be such, and India is such an active secular. In case of passive secular, France, USA, they are passive secular. You know about their majority of religion. Here we have diversity. We are unity in diversity. So we need to be bit active. We have to keep a surveillance. Fine. So this is the word secular here refers to. The word secularism here refers to. Now again, it has been added through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Then does it mean the question is same? Weren't we secular earlier? Just from 1950 to 1976, weren't we secular for these 20, 25, 6 years? The case is not the same. Being a democratic country, and at that time, the definition of the situation is same as the situation was socialism. At that time, the secularism was understand that the definition of secularism which was prevalent was this type of secularism. We could not adopt it. The reason being diversity. So what we had to do, just just because our preamble, our constitution does not be misinterpreted, we mentioned the term secularism in these words: liberty of belief, liberty of faith, and liberty of worship. We mentioned the definition of secularism which we adopted. We did not mention the word secular. The reason is same, misinterpretation. We being democratic country could not have mentioned it. But when as we moved after the independence, 25, 26 years, we could write it. We were very easily able to write it because now it is not affecting our relations with the other countries. We have already created our face, we have already created an image that what type of country we are. So why the then government realized these words to be added in 1976? The only reason is, I am not saying this. The judges of Supreme Court have mentioned it. The only reason was politics, votes. The judges of the Supreme Court have also mentioned that this is not right. You're not doing it right with the constitution. You have not done it right with the constitution. Either more, you have made fool of the people who are mentioning socialism and secular, because many of you might not be knowing the actual meaning of socialism and secular earlier in such a way. Leave that, you might have not even read this preamble in such a way. Many of you, please don't get offensive. Many of you. It doesn't mean that I am the only one who can make you understand preamble in such a way. I do not mean the same. But yes, fine. So coming on to the next is democratic republic. The term is democratic republic. Now, why have I written this democratic republic together? Let's understand an example. We have one term that is democracy. Now, democracy is actually the representation of the people. Clear, right? So, let's say this pie chart comprises of total population. This 80% of population voted the party Y. This 20% of the population voted the party X. Fine. Now, can this Y party, after coming into power, exploit this 20% of the people? That, buddy, we got to know that you have not voted us. Why the hell you did not voted us? Can they exploit them? No, sir, that is not at all possible. But if I talk about democracy, it is possible to an extent, because democracy can be mentioned here as dictatorship by numbers. But as soon as we mention the term here republic, republic here refers to that the head of the state in itself is chosen by the people of the country. So if in case the head of the government along with the government will exploit, then this head of the state will come into an action. In other words, this republic is signifying the constitution as well. That is why on 26th January, every 26th January, when the constitution was actually commenced, however, it was adopted in November 26, 1949. But 26th Jan, when it was enacted, when it was it was commenced, the whole of the constitution came into action. On November 26, 1949, only a part of it came into an action. This day is celebrated as Republic Day. So this, why Republic Day? Because this Republic is actually signifying the Constitution. That is, the document is Constitution, which is actually limiting the powers of the government, and that is why they are not able to exploit the people of the country. But in other terms, the democratic means a responsible government, a representation of the people. But just to avoid the exploitation, the word republic have been added together. And the government at the time of 1976 also realized this word, this understanding. And that is why it did not mention the word socialist and secular in between this democratic republic. They mentioned these two terms after sovereign, because this democratic republic needs to be written together. The definition of there requires that it needs to be written together. Now, what are the impacts? The impact is first past the post system. First past the post system. This is a type of an election. This is a type of a system of voting. We will be understanding it later. Then we have parliamentary committees. If a law has to be passed, if a legislation has to be passed, there are several committees which actually look into any of the legislation, any of the budget which the government is passing. So, in some cases, the you can say the consideration by the committee is mandatory as well. Also, the third impact, there is a parliamentary control over the executive, so that the executive, which is the chosen country, which is the chosen people, chosen government, does not exploit. If in case they exploit, they are answerable to the legislature. In other words, executive is answerable to the legislature. So parliamentary control over executive, or executive is answerable to the legislature, so that it does not misuse its power. And that is why, if in case the executive is not able to answer its actions, the government, the elected government is not able to answer the questions in the legislature, no confidence motion. They have to answer each and every. That is why the opposition is given a chance to raise the question that why did this happen, why such thing have happened. So this is how you can understand the preamble as a whole. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. These words, sovereign, socialist, democratic republic, mentions about the objectives. These were the words. However, sovereign democratic republic might have been the words which were mentioned in the objectives resolution. So that is why they mentioned the objectives of a country. Now it is mentioning, it is referring to the nature of the country. And we, the people of India, is a source of the constitution as well as the preamble. Right? So that is, we all would be discussing in this lecture. I would be discussing the rest of the part of the preamble in the next lecture. By then, take care. Thank you so much.